When you hear the word flow, your mind probably jumps to productivity, right? Getting in the zone to get stuff done. But what if it's something way deeper than that? Today, we're going to explore the incredible work of psychologist Mihály Csíkszentmihályi, and we're going to look at flow not as some kind of life hack, but as a really profound insight into what makes life feel truly worth living. So, where does a huge idea like flow even come from? Well, you might guess a quiet university lab or library, but you'd be wrong. This story actually starts in the middle of chaos, amidst the rubble of post-World War II Europe. It starts with a question that haunted a young Mihály Csíkszentmihályi. I mean, think about it. As a kid, he watched his entire world just collapse. He saw the very structures of society, jobs, money, status, everything, get stripped away. And so many of the adults who had built their identities on those things, they just crumbled. But then there were a few, just a few, who seemed to have this incredible inner strength. They held on to their purpose and their serenity, even when they had lost absolutely everything else. And seeing this huge difference, this stark contrast between total despair on one side and this incredible resilience on the other, well, it sparked the one question that would end up driving his entire career. See, he wasn't interested in what broke people down. He wanted to know what made them strong. What was this secret source of meaning that allowed some people to not just survive, but to actually flourish when everything was against them? Answering that one question became his life's work. So to find the answer, he made a pretty radical choice for the time. Back then, psychology was mostly focused on what was wrong with people, pathology, mental illness. But he decided to do the opposite. He set out to study people who were at their absolute best, people who were deeply, passionately engaged in what they did. He went out and found people at the absolute peak of their fields. And it's a really strange group when you look at it. Rock climbers, surgeons, composers, chess masters. I mean, what on earth could they all possibly have in common? Well, it turns out when he asked them to describe the moments they felt most alive, the moments they were doing their best work, their answers were shockingly similar. They all talked about this incredible state where the outside world just seemed to fade away. They were so absorbed, so focused, that their sense of a separate self, that little voice in your head, it just melted away. They basically became one with what they were doing. So, after all these interviews, Csíkszentmihályi started to see a pattern. He identified the core elements of this amazing state. First, intense focus on what's happening right now. Action and awareness just merge together. You lose your ego, that nagging inner critic. You feel this sense of complete control. And maybe most importantly, the activity is what he called autotelic. That's a fancy word that just means the reward is doing the thing itself, not getting some prize at the end. He needed a name for this state of optimal experience, and he gave it one: flow. It's that feeling of effortless immersion where time seems to bend and stretch, and the experience itself is the only thing that matters. Okay, so that all sounds pretty great, but how do we get there? It turns out flow isn't some random thing that just happens. It shows up under a very specific, almost delicate set of conditions. It exists in this kind of sweet spot between two other states of mind that we all know very well. All right, on one side, you've got anxiety. You know this feeling. It's when a challenge is just way, way beyond your current skill level. You feel stressed, overwhelmed, totally out of your depth. Then, on the other side, you've got boredom. This is when your skills are super high, but the task is just too easy. There's no challenge, so your mind starts to wander and you just feel blah, disengaged. But right there, in the middle, that's where flow lives. It pops up in that perfect channel where a high challenge is met with a high level of skill. You're being stretched, you're pushed right to your limits, but you feel completely capable of meeting the moment. That is the zone of optimal experience. This chart here really gives us a full map of our day-to-day consciousness. So take a look. Down in the bottom left, if the challenge is low and your skill is low, you feel apathy. Now go to the bottom right. High skill but a low challenge, that's when you get boredom or maybe relaxation. Then shoot over to the top left. A high challenge without the skills to back it up creates worry and anxiety. But then, up there in that top right corner, where high challenge meets high skill, that, my friends, is the channel of flow. So this all raises a big question. Is this incredible state of flow just for elite performers, the rock climbers and surgeons? Or is it something that all of us can experience? To figure that out, Csíkszentmihályi knew he needed a way to map people's inner worlds, not in a lab, but as they were actually living their lives. He invented this really clever technique called the experience sampling method. Basically, people carried around these pagers, this was before smartphones, of course, and they would just beep at random times during the day. Whenever the pager beeped, they had to stop what they were doing and write down exactly what they were doing, what they were thinking, and how they were feeling in that precise moment. It gave him a real-time snapshot of their inner life. And this method turned out to be incredibly reliable. He got an 85% response rate, which is just huge for this kind of research. It meant he captured thousands and thousands of authentic moments from hundreds of people's lives, creating one of the biggest databases of human experience ever collected. And what that data revealed? Well, it was genuinely surprising. So this is where it gets really counterintuitive. Where do you think people reported finding the most flow? You'd probably guess during their free time, right? Relaxing, watching TV. But the data showed the exact opposite. Look at this chart. People experienced flow states most often at work. Way more often than during passive leisure like watching TV, which, it turns out, was actually linked more with apathy. And this brings us to what might be the most important takeaway of all. Flow isn't just about feeling good for a moment. It's actually the engine of our personal growth. It's a cornerstone of what we now call positive psychology.
Csíkszentmihályi makes a really critical distinction here between pleasure and enjoyment. Pleasure is that feeling you get when you satisfy a basic need, like eating when you're hungry. It feels good, sure, but it doesn't help you grow. It just brings you back to normal. Enjoyment, on the other hand, is what you feel when you meet a new challenge, when you stretch your skills. It takes effort, but it leaves you with this amazing sense of accomplishment. That is the feeling of flow.
And this is the key right here. Every single time we do something that gets us into a state of flow, we come out of it just a little bit different. Our skills have improved, we've become a little more capable, a little more confident, and over a whole lifetime, chasing that feeling of enjoyment through flow is what builds a more complex, a more interesting, and a more resilient self. So what's the bottom line here? It seems the best moments in our lives are optimal experiences. They don't come from just relaxing and consuming. They come from active engagement. It's all about finding that sweet spot where a high challenge meets your high skills. And the surprising truth is that we find the state more often in our work and our hobbies than we do on the couch. Chasing this state, this enjoyment, is what fosters real, meaningful personal growth. It's how we don't just feel better for a moment, but we actually become better. So that really leaves us with a final and, I think, a pretty provocative thought. It is so easy to just default to passive pleasure when we have free time. We all do it. But the real path to a deeply fulfilling life seems to lie in actively seeking out enjoyment, in seeking out flow. So the question to ask yourself isn't just what makes me feel good, it's what challenges me to grow? Where can you